The morning sun cast long shadows across the fields of New Busan. Yunwoo wiped sweat from his face as he worked the soil with his simple tools. The red earth was hard and dry, but it was all they had. He looked up at the sky and saw the dark shape of a Vorthak ship hanging there like a metal cloud. It never moved. It just watched. "Papa, why do the bad ships stay up there?" asked Nari. She was only 8 years old, with bright eyes and a smile that made Hyunwoo forget his troubles for a moment. "They watch us to make sure we work hard," Hyunwoo said softly. He did not want to scare his daughter. The truth was much worse than that. So-young came over with water for them to drink. Her hands shook a little as she handed Hyunwoo the cup. She always shook when the ships were close. "The collectors will come soon," she whispered. Hyunwoo nodded. Every month the Vorthak came to take most of their food. They left just enough for the humans to stay alive and keep working. Nothing more. The Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for 300 years. They were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and cold. They spoke in voices that sounded like metal scraping against stone. Most people in the galaxy were afraid of them, very afraid. Commander Veltar was the Vorthak who controlled New Busan. He lived in a big, metal building in the center of town. The building had no windows. Guards with weapons stood outside all day and all night. Nobody was allowed to go near it unless the Vorthak called for them. Veltar believed that fear was the best way to control people. When someone broke a rule, he made sure everyone saw what happened to them. Sometimes people disappeared in the night. Sometimes they were hurt in front of everyone. The message was always clear: obey or suffer. In the fields nearby, other families worked just like Hyunwoo's family. Dongmin and his wife Eunji had twin boys who were 10 years old. The boys were thin because there was never enough food. But they still smiled and played when the Vorthak were not watching. Old Bong-su remembered Earth. He was the only one in New Busan who had been born there. Sometimes he told stories about the blue skies and the green grass. He told them about cities with millions of people and ships that could fly between the stars. But those days were gone now. Earth was far away, and the Vorthak controlled everything. "Remember," Bong-su would say quietly when the young people gathered around him, "we were not always slaves. We had cities and ships and armies. We had hope. But hope was dangerous. The Vorthak did not like it when people remembered the old days. They wanted everyone to believe that the Vorthak way was the only way. They wanted people to think that humans were weak and stupid." The sound of engines filled the air. 3 Vorthak ships came down from the sky. They landed in the center of town with loud crashes that shook the ground. Dust flew everywhere. The ships were black and covered with weapons. "Collection day," So-young said. Her voice was very quiet. Hyunwoo picked up Nari and held her close. "Stay with Mama," he told her. "Do not talk to the soldiers." The back of the ships opened with a hiss. Vorthak soldiers came out. They wore armor that made them look even bigger and more scary. Their weapons hummed with energy. Behind the soldiers came the collectors. These Vorthak wore different clothes and carried devices that could count how much food the humans had grown. Veltar was with them. He was taller than the other Vorthak, and his armor was decorated with marks that showed his rank. When he walked, the ground seemed to shake under his feet. His 4 arms moved in ways that looked wrong to human eyes. "Humans of New Busan," Veltar said. His voice was loud and cold. "Present your tribute." One by one, the families brought their food to the ships. They had worked for weeks to grow it. Now they had to give most of it away. Hyunwoo carried heavy bags of grain that should have fed his family for months. Instead, it would go to feed Vorthak soldiers on some distant world. The collectors counted everything. They wrote numbers on their devices. They took 80% of the food just like always. What was left would barely keep the humans alive until the next harvest. Tae-hyun, a boy who was 16 years old, stood with his mother Mi-kyung. She was sick and weak. She coughed all the time and could barely stand. Tae-hyun had hidden some food to help her get better. It was not much, just a small bag of medicine plants and some extra grain. But the Vorthak had ways of finding hidden things. They had machines that could see through walls and detect buried objects. A soldier pointed his scanner at Taehyun's house and the device started beeping. "Search that building," Veltar ordered. 2 soldiers went into the house. They came out, carrying the hidden food. Taehyun's face went white with fear. "Who hid this?" Veltar asked. Nobody answered. The humans all looked at the ground. They knew what happened to people who broke the rules. Veltar walked over to Taehyun. The boy was shaking, but he did not run. There was nowhere to run to anyway. "You thought you could steal from the Vorthak Empire?" Veltar said. "You thought you were clever." "My mother is sick," Taehyun said quietly. "She needs food to get better." Veltar laughed. It was a sound like metal breaking. "Your mother's sickness is not our concern. Our concern is obedience." The other humans watched in silence. They wanted to help Taehyun, but they knew it would only make things worse. The Vorthak were too strong and too many. "Please," Mikyung said. She tried to stand up but fell down. "Please do not hurt my son. I will work harder. I will do anything." "You will watch," Veltar said. "You will all watch and learn what happens to thieves." He turned to his soldiers. "Bring the punishment tools." The soldiers went back to their ships and came out with metal, poles and chains. They set up a frame in the middle of the town square. Everyone knew what it was for. They had seen it used before. Hyunwoo held Nari tighter. He did not want her to see what was about to happen. But the Vorthak made everyone watch. That was the point. They wanted the fear to spread. So Young put her hand on Hyunwoo's arm. "We should take her away," she whispered. "We cannot," Hyunwoo said. "They will notice." The Vorthak pushed all the humans into a circle around the punishment frame. Guards with weapons made sure nobody left. Veltar wanted them to see everything. He wanted them to remember. Taehyun stood in the center of the circle. His mother cried behind him. The other humans looked at their feet. They had learned that it was better not to watch too closely. The Vorthak did not like it when people showed too much emotion, but they also had learned something else. They had learned to hate. Deep inside, where the Vorthak could not see, the humans burned with anger. They remembered every cruel act. They remembered every friend who had disappeared. They remembered every child who had gone hungry. The Vorthak thought fear was the perfect tool. They thought it made people weak and easy to control. They did not understand that fear could also make people desperate. And desperate people could be very dangerous. As Veltar prepared to make his example of Taehyun, he did not notice the looks in the human's eyes. He did not see the small signs that something was building. He was too sure of his power to pay attention. That would be his mistake. Veltar raised his weapon toward Taehyun. The energy hummed and glowed with deadly light. The young man closed his eyes and waited for the end. "Let this be a lesson," Veltar announced to the crowd. "The Vorthak Empire does not forgive. The Vorthak Empire does not forget." The humans stood in their forced circle watching in terrible silence. Some of the women were crying quietly. The men clenched their fists but kept them at their sides. They had learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse. Mikyung fell to her knees. "Please," she begged. "Take me instead, kill me instead of my son." Veltar did not even look at her. "Your son chose to steal. Now he pays the price." The weapon powered up with a high whining sound. Taehyun opened his eyes and looked at his mother one last time. He wanted to tell her he was sorry. He wanted to tell her he loved her. But his throat was too dry to speak. Then something small and fast broke through the circle of guards. Nari had slipped away from her parents while they watched the terrible scene. Her 8-year-old mind could not understand why the big aliens wanted to hurt Taehyun. All she knew was that it was wrong. Someone had to stop it. "No," she cried as she ran toward Veltar. "Stop hurting him. He is good. He was just trying to help his mama." The little girl's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Everyone turned to look at her. She was so small next to the huge Vorthak commander. Her black hair flew behind her as she ran. "Nari!" Hyunwoo shouted. He tried to run after his daughter, but 2 guards blocked his way with their weapons. "Please," So Young screamed. "She is just a child. She does not understand." But Veltar was already turning his weapon toward the little girl. In his mind, she was breaking the rules just like Taehyun. She was showing disrespect to Vorthak authority. The punishment was always the same. "Children must learn obedience early," he said in his cold metal voice. The weapon fired. The blue energy bolt hit Nari in the chest. She was lifted off her feet and thrown backward. Her small body hit the ground and did not move again. The smile that had always lit up her face was gone forever. For a moment, nobody made any sound. The air itself seemed to stop moving. Even the Vorthak guards looked surprised. They had killed many humans before, but never one so young, never one who was just trying to help. Then So Young screamed. It was a sound that came from the deepest part of her soul. A sound of pain so pure and terrible that it made even the Vorthak step back. She ran to her daughter and fell down beside the still body. "Nari," she whispered, touching the little girl's face. "Nari, wake up. Please wake up." But Nari would never wake up again. Hyunwoo walked slowly toward his wife and daughter. His face was empty of all expression. The guards let him pass. Even they seemed to understand that something had changed in that moment. He knelt down and picked up Nari's body. She was so light, so small. Just a few minutes ago she had been laughing and asking questions. Now she was gone. "You killed my daughter," he said to Veltar. His voice was very quiet, but somehow everyone could hear it. "She broke the law," Veltar replied. But his voice was not as steady as before. Something in the human's eyes made him uncomfortable. Hyunwoo looked around at all the other humans. They were staring at him and at the small body in his arms. He saw Dongmin and Yoonji holding their twin boys close. He saw old Bong-soo with tears running down his face. He saw Taehyun, still alive because Nari had saved him. "Look at her," Hyunwoo said to them all. "Look at what they did to my little girl." The humans looked. They saw the child they had all watched grow up. The child who had given them flowers she picked from the fields. The child who had asked innocent questions and laughed at simple jokes. Now she was dead because she tried to stop cruelty. Something broke inside each of them, something that had been holding back their anger and their hate. They had endured years of slavery and abuse. They had watched friends disappear and families torn apart. But this was different. This was a line that should never have been crossed. Mi-kyung stood up slowly. Her sickness seemed forgotten. "They killed a baby," she said. "They killed an innocent baby." "She was interfering with justice," Veltar said, but he sounded less sure now. "Justice?" Bong-soo stepped forward. The old man's eyes blazed with fury. "You call this justice? Murdering a child who wanted to help?" The crowd of humans began to move. Not toward the Vorthak, but toward each other. They formed a tight group around Hyunwoo and his family. Their faces were changing. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, something dangerous. Veltar noticed the change. "Return to your homes," he ordered. "This display is finished." But the humans did not move. They stood together, looking at Nari's body and then at the Vorthak who had killed her. Chanwoo, who worked on the communication systems for the town, was thinking fast. He remembered things from before the Vorthak came. He remembered codes and frequencies that the aliens had never found. His hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. "I have to go," he whispered to the person next to him. "I have to tell others what happened here." Seokjin heard him. Seokjin had been a soldier once before the Vorthak conquered everything. He still remembered how to fight, how to plan, how to strike back. "Not just tell them," he whispered back. "Show them." Yoonji was holding a small device that could record images and sound. She had been filming her children playing earlier. Now she turned it toward the scene in the town square. She recorded the Vorthak weapons and the guards. She recorded Nari's body and her parents' grief. "The whole galaxy needs to see this," she said quietly. Veltar was getting angry. The humans were not behaving the way they should. They should be running home in terror. They should be even more afraid than before. Instead, they were standing together and whispering to each other. I said, "Return to your homes," he shouted. This time some of the humans did move, but they did not run away. They moved closer together. They formed a wall of bodies around Yunwu and So Young. "We heard you," Dongmin said, "but we are not leaving them alone. You will obey or face the consequences," Veltar warned. "What consequences?" Bongsu asked. "You already killed our child. What else can you do to us?" That was when Veltar realized his mistake. Fear only worked when people had something left to lose. When people had hope that things might get better if they just obeyed. But these humans had watched their hope die with an 8-year-old girl. "Execute them all," Veltar ordered his guards. But before the guards could raise their weapons, something unexpected happened. The humans began to sing. It was an old song from Earth. A song that Bongsu had taught them about home and family and love. They sang it softly with tears in their eyes as they stood around Nari's body. The Vorthak did not understand the words, but they understood the meaning. This was not surrender. This was not fear. This was something they had never seen before from a conquered people. This was defiance. And in the back of the crowd, Chan Wu slipped away toward the communication center. He had work to do. Important work. The galaxy was about to learn what the Vorthak had done, and the galaxy was not going to forgive them for it. Chan Wu's fingers moved quickly over the old communication equipment. The Vorthak thought they had destroyed all the human military technology, but they were wrong. Hidden in basements and secret rooms across the galaxy, humans had kept pieces of their past alive. The transmission was simple but powerful. It carried 3 things: the recording of Nari's murder, her name, and a message that said, "They killed our child." Chan Wu sent it out on every frequency he could find. Old Earth military channels, hidden resistance networks, and civilian bands that the Vorthak did not monitor. Within hours, the message reached Mars. Wu Jin was working late in his laboratory when the transmission came through. He was a scientist who studied how to make ships fly faster and weapons hit harder. The Vorthak allowed him to work because they thought his research was harmless. They were wrong about that too. When Wu Jin saw the recording, he stopped everything he was doing. He watched the little girl run toward the Vorthak commander. He watched her try to save someone she barely knew. He watched her die for showing kindness. "No," he whispered to the empty lab. "No, this cannot happen." He sent the message to every scientist he knew. Then he walked to a hidden panel in his lab wall and opened it. Inside were plans he had been working on for years. Ships that could fight. Weapons that could kill Vorthak. Technology that could free humanity. He had been waiting for the right moment to use these plans. Now he knew that moment had come. On Earth, Admiral Jin Ho received the transmission in an underground bunker. The Earth government had been destroyed long ago, but some military leaders had survived in hiding. They had spent decades planning for a day that might never come. Jin Ho was an old man now, but his eyes were still sharp. He had lost his own family to the Vorthak years ago. Watching Nari die brought back all the pain and anger he had been carrying. "Send this to every cell, every resistance group, every hidden base," he ordered his communications officer. "Make sure everyone sees it." "Sir," the officer said quietly, "this will start a war." "No," Jin Ho replied. "This will finish one." The message spread like fire across human space. It reached merchant ships hiding in asteroid fields. It reached workers in Vorthak factories. It reached soldiers who had been pretending to serve their conquerors while secretly planning rebellion. Youngsu was flying his cargo ship between worlds, carrying supplies for his Vorthak masters. When he received the transmission, he pulled his ship out of normal space and watched the recording 3 times. He had met Nari once, months ago, when he delivered food to New Busan. She had given him a flower and asked if he had any children of his own. He had said no, and she had hugged his leg and said that was sad because children made everything better. Now, she was dead. Young-Soo opened his cargo hold and dumped the Vorthak supplies into space. Then he turned his ship toward a hidden base and sent a message of his own. "I am coming home, it is time to fight." Hye-jin had been a diplomat before the conquest. She had spent years trying to find peaceful ways to live with the Vorthak. She had believed that understanding and compromise could solve any problem. When she saw what happened to Nari, those beliefs died. She was on a space station in neutral territory, meeting with aliens who still traded with both humans and Vorthak. She showed them the recording and asked a simple question. "Will you help us?" Most of them said no. They were afraid of Vorthak revenge. But a few species had their own children. They understood what it meant to lose the innocent. "We cannot give you weapons," one alien said, "but we can give you information. We can tell you where the Vorthak keep their weakest ships. We can tell you which systems have the smallest garrisons," said another. It was not much help, but it was something, and something was better than nothing. Back on New Busan, the Vorthak were getting worried. After the singing stopped, the humans had finally gone to their homes, but something felt different. They moved differently. They looked at the Vorthak differently. Veltar reported the incident to his superiors. He said the humans had been properly punished and order was restored, but he did not mention how the humans had acted afterward. He did not want to admit that. His control might be slipping. The humans buried Nari in a small grave behind her family's house. They marked it with stones arranged in the shape of a flower, because she had loved flowers. Every person in New Busan came to say goodbye. Even Taehyun, the boy she had died trying to save. "I will remember her forever," he promised So-young. "I will make sure everyone remembers what she did." So-young just nodded. She had not spoken much since her daughter died, but her eyes burned with a pain that would never go away. Hyun-woo stood beside the grave after everyone else left. "I failed to protect you," he whispered to his daughter, "but I promise I will not fail to get justice for you." He did not know that millions of humans across the galaxy were making the same promise. In hidden shipyards that the Vorthak had never found, old warships were being pulled out of storage. Engineers who had been pretending to be farmers and merchants revealed their true skills. Weapons that had been buried in secret caches were dug up and cleaned. Kyung-ho led a team of humans who had been studying captured Vorthak technology for years. They had learned how the alien ships worked, how their weapons functioned, how their armor could be broken. "We only get one chance at this," he told his team. "When we reveal ourselves, we have to hit them hard and fast." "How long do we have?" asked one of his engineers. Kyung-ho looked at the recording of Nari one more time. The little girl's face reminded him of his own daughter, who had died in the early days of the conquest. "Not long enough," he said, "but it will have to do." The Vorthak Empire had ruled through fear for 3 centuries. They had crushed dozens of species and conquered hundreds of worlds. They thought they knew everything about how to control people. But they had never killed a human child in front of her parents before. They had never crossed that particular line. They were about to learn the difference between ruling through fear and facing true human anger. Ships began moving in the darkness, between stars. Messages flew through hidden networks. Weapons were loaded and aimed. Across human space, people who had been slaves for decades suddenly remembered what it felt like to be free. The Vorthak had awakened something they did not understand, something that had been sleeping since the conquest began, something that would not rest until every alien who had hurt human children was dead. The recording of Nari's murder ended with her small body lying still on the ground. But for humans across the galaxy, it was not an ending. It was a beginning. The attacks began at exactly the same time across 50 star systems. It was not an accident. Every human resistance cell had synchronized their clocks to Earth Standard Time. When the moment came, they struck as one. Captain Sang-woo was leading the first wave. His ship had once carried ore from asteroid mines to Vorthak factories. Now it carried missiles and angry humans who wanted revenge. They painted Nari's name on the side of every ship in their small fleet. "Remember what we are fighting for," Sang-woo told his crew over the communication system. "We are not fighting for territory or riches. We are fighting for a little girl who tried to save someone and died for it. His ships came out of hyperspace right next to a Vorthak patrol fleet. The aliens were not expecting an attack. They had grown lazy after years of ruling without challenge. Their weapons were not even powered up. Sang Woo's ships fired everything they had. Old mining lasers cut through Vorthak hulls like knives through paper. Cargo containers full of explosives rammed into alien dreadnoughts. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose because they really did not care if they lived or died anymore. For Nari, they shouted as their ships exploded against the enemy. The Vorthak tried to fight back, but they were too shocked to respond quickly. In 10 minutes, their entire patrol fleet was destroyed. Not one human ship survived the attack, but they had killed hundreds of aliens who would never hurt another child. On the planet Kepler 442b, Hyunwoo led the colonists in their own war. They had no ships or heavy weapons, but they knew the land better than any alien. They had been planning this for weeks ever since Nari died. Ki-hoon had been a demolitions expert before the conquest. He showed the others how to make bombs from farm chemicals. The Vorthak buildings are strong, he said, but they have weak points. They struck at night when most of the aliens were sleeping. Small groups of humans crept through the darkness, like ghosts. They planted explosives under communication towers and weapon storage buildings. They cut power lines and water pipes. When the bombs went off, the Vorthak base was thrown into chaos. Aliens ran around in the dark trying to figure out what was happening. They could not call for help because their radios were destroyed. They could not see the human attackers because their lights were gone. Hyunwoo and a group of farmers surrounded the main command building. They had hunting rifles and farm tools, nothing fancy. But they had something the Vorthak did not expect. They were not afraid to die. "Come out, Veltar," Hyunwoo shouted. "Come out and face the father of the child you murdered." Veltar appeared at the building's entrance, surrounded by guards. He still looked confident, but there was fear in his black eyes now. "You cannot win," he told the humans. "More ships will come. You will all be killed." "Good," Hyunwoo replied. "My daughter is waiting for me, but you are going to join her first." The battle was short and bloody. The Vorthak had better weapons, but the humans had better reasons to fight. When it was over, Veltar and all his soldiers were dead. The humans had paid a heavy price, but they did not care. Their children would be safe from these particular aliens. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Humans who had been quiet slaves for years suddenly became deadly warriors. They used whatever weapons they could find: kitchen knives, mining equipment, stolen alien guns, even their bare hands. On Mars, Wu Jin's secret fleet launched from hidden bases. These were not converted cargo ships like Sang Woo's fleet. These were real warships, built in secret over many years. They had been waiting for this moment. The fleet hit a major Vorthak supply depot without warning. The aliens had millions of tons of food and weapons stored there. Food that had been stolen from human worlds. Weapons that had been used to kill human rebels. "Burn it all," Wu Jin ordered. His ships pounded the depot until nothing was left but floating wreckage. The Vorthak lost enough supplies to feed an army for a year. More importantly, they lost the feeling that they were safe anywhere. Admiral Jin Ho coordinated the attacks from his hidden bunker on Earth. Reports came in from every battle zone. Most of the news was good. Human forces were winning fight after fight, even though they were outnumbered and outgunned. "How are we doing this?" asked his aide. "Our ships are older and smaller. Our weapons are weaker. By all logic, we should be losing." Jin Ho looked at the picture of Nari that was displayed on every screen in the bunker. The little girl's face reminded every human why they were fighting. "Logic has nothing to do with it," Jin Ho said. "They are fighting to keep an empire. We are fighting to avenge a child." Ho Jin commanded a mixed fleet of merchant ships, military vessels, and civilian transports. His crews came from a dozen different worlds. Some had never fought before, but they all knew Nari's story. They found a Vorthak convoy carrying prisoners to slave camps. The aliens thought they were safe because they had escort ships and heavy armor. They were wrong. Ho Jin's fleet attacked with desperate fury. They did not care about tactics or strategy. They just wanted to kill Vorthak and free human prisoners. Ships rammed into each other. Explosions lit up space like new stars. When the battle ended, the convoy was destroyed and 3,000 human prisoners were free. Many of Hojin's ships were gone too, but their crews died happy knowing they had saved their own people. The Vorthak tried to understand what was happening. They sent messages to all their commanders asking for explanations. How had the humans hidden so many ships? Where did they get all these weapons? Why were they fighting so hard? The answers they got back were confusing and frightening. The humans were not following normal military rules. They were not trying to capture territory or destroy specific targets. They were just killing every Vorthak they could find. And they were winning. Young-Su led a fleet of converted cargo ships against a Vorthak fortress. The aliens had built it on an asteroid to guard an important shipping route. It was supposed to be impossible to attack. Young-Su did not try to attack it. He just flew his ship straight into it. "Tell my story," he said over the radio just before impact. "Tell them I died for Nari." His ship hit the fortress like a meteor. The explosion was so big it cracked the asteroid in half. The fortress and everyone inside it were destroyed instantly. The shipping route was open for human ships to use. On every world where humans lived, similar uprisings began. Factory workers turned their tools into weapons. Farmers used their knowledge of the land to strike at alien bases. Even children who were old enough to hold a gun joined the fight. The Vorthak Empire had ruled for 300 years through fear and brutality. They had always believed that violence was the answer to every problem. Now they were learning what happened when they used violence against the wrong target. They had awakened something in humanity that they could not control or understand. Something that would not stop until every alien who had hurt human children was dead. The war was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Vorthak had made a simple mistake. They had killed the wrong child in front of the wrong people. Now they were going to pay for that mistake with their lives. The war lasted only 6 months, but it felt like forever to both sides. The Vorthak Empire, which had stood for 3 centuries, crumbled like a house built on sand. Every day brought news of another defeat, another fleet destroyed, another world liberated. The aliens tried to negotiate 3 times. Each time they sent messages offering to withdraw from human space and leave the humans alone. Each time, the human response was the same. Admiral Su Min delivered the final answer from the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, the view screen showed a picture of Nari playing in a field of flowers. "You killed our child," she said into the camera, knowing the message would reach every Vorthak commander. There is nothing to negotiate. There is nothing to discuss. There is only justice. The Vorthak leaders met in their great palace on their homeworld. They were desperate now. Half their empire was gone, their fleets were scattered or destroyed. Worlds that had been loyal for generations were rebelling. "How did this happen?" demanded the High Commander. "They are just humans. They are weak and divided." "Not anymore," replied his aide. "They show their soldiers the recording of the child's death before every battle. It makes them fight like demons." "We can offer them anything," another commander said. "Money, territory, their own, government. Surely they can be reasoned with." But the High Commander was beginning to understand the truth. He had spent his life believing that fear was the ultimate weapon. Now he was learning that there were things stronger than fear. Love, grief, the need for justice. "No," he said quietly. "They will not stop until we are all dead." He was right. Jae-sung coordinated the final assault from a command ship hidden in an asteroid field. He had been a teacher before the war, showing human children about math and science. Now he planned the destruction of an empire. His fleet was huge now. Ships from every human world had joined the cause. Some were military vessels built in secret. Others were civilian ships converted for war. All of them carried the same message, painted on their hulls, for Nari. "Remember," he told his captains over the radio, "we are not conquerors. We are not here to build an empire of our own. We are here to make sure this never happens again." The human fleet jumped into the Vorthak home system and found it heavily defended. Hundreds of alien ships waited for them, along with orbital fortresses and planetary shields. It should have been impossible to win. But the humans no longer cared about impossibility. Byung-ho led the first wave of attackers. His ship was one of the new ones, built specifically for this war. It was fast and deadly, but more importantly, it carried something the Vorthak had never seen before. As his fleet approached the enemy, Byung-ho activated a special transmitter. Every Vorthak ship and station in the system suddenly received the same signal. It was the recording of Nari's death, broadcast on every frequency at once. "This is who you murdered," Byung-ho announced. "This is why you are all going to die, today." The psychological effect was devastating. The Vorthak had spent months hearing about this little girl. They had seen her face on every human propaganda broadcast. Now, as they prepared to fight for their lives, her image filled their screens. Some of the alien crews broke and ran. Others hesitated just long enough for the human ships to get close. The battle that followed was the largest space combat in galactic history. Ships exploded like fireworks. Beams of energy cut through armor and hull. Missiles streaked between the fleets like angry meteors. But through it all, the humans kept coming. No matter how many ships they lost, more appeared to take their place. Dong-sik led a special team of commandos whose job was to capture the Vorthak ruling council. They fought their way through the alien capital city street by street, building by building. Every Vorthak they met died fighting, but the humans just kept advancing. When they finally reached the Great Palace, they found the alien leaders waiting for them. The High Commander stood in his throne room, surrounded by his advisors and guards. "You have won," he said to Dong-sik. "Your species has proven itself stronger than ours. Surely that is enough." Dong-sik looked around the throne room. It was decorated with trophies from conquered worlds, art stolen from destroyed civilizations, the bones of species that had been wiped out for resisting Vorthak rule. "You ruled the galaxy for 300 years, Dong-sik said. "In all that time, did you ever show mercy to a conquered enemy?" The High Commander did not answer because they both knew the truth. "Then why should we show mercy to you?" Dong-sik asked. The last Vorthak leader died in his throne room, along with all his advisors and guards. When the news reached the human fleets, there was no celebration, no cheering or parties. The humans had won their war, but the victory felt hollow. They had done what they set out to do. Every Vorthak in the galaxy was dead. The empire that had ruled through fear and cruelty was gone forever, but none of it would bring Nari back. In the months that followed, other alien species came to the humans with offers of alliance and trade. They had watched the war and learned an important lesson. Humans could be peaceful neighbors or terrible enemies, but they should never be ignored. Ji-won helped establish new governments on the liberated worlds. She tried to build something better than what the Vorthak had created, but it was hard work, and she often wondered if they were doing the right thing. "Are we becoming what we fought against?" she asked Admiral Jin-ho during one of their planning meetings. The old soldier looked tired. The war had aged him more than the previous decade of hiding and planning. "I do not know," he admitted, "but I know this. No one will ever kill our children again." On Kepler 442b, Hyun-woo and So-young stood beside their daughter's grave. The war was over, but their grief would never end. Other children played in the fields around them, free and safe for the first time in their lives. "Do you think she would be proud of what we did?" So-young asked. Hyun-woo thought about his daughter's last moments. She had died trying to save someone. She had shown kindness when the world was full of cruelty. She had chosen love over fear. "I think she would want us to be better," he said. "I think she would want us to make sure this never happens to anyone else." They had built a garden around Nari's grave. Flowers grew there now, bright and beautiful, in the alien soil. Children from all over New Busan came to play there, and their parents told them stories about the little girl who had changed the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire was gone, but its legacy remained. Thousands of species were free, for the first time in centuries. Trade routes opened between worlds that had been enemies. Art and music and ideas flowed freely across the galaxy. But the humans carried a burden that would never leave them. They had won their war through violence and hatred. They had become killers in the name of justice. And though they told themselves it was necessary, they could never forget what it had cost them. The price of freedom had been written in blood. The price of justice had been paid with rage and grief, and the price of a single child's life had been the destruction of an empire and the death of an entire species. In the garden where Nari was buried, a small stone marker bore a simple inscription. She died trying to help someone. Let us live the same way. It was a reminder and a promise, a hope that the galaxy could be better than it had been, a prayer that children like Nari would never again have to die for showing kindness. The war was over. The empire was gone. But the work of building a better world had only just begun, and in the hearts of every human who fought in that war, a little girl's voice still echoed, "Stop hurting him. He is good." They had stopped the hurting. Now they had to learn how to be good.